Less is more is one of the mantras of design. All branches of design strive to find ways to decrease the amount of noise in products and services, while maximizing user interaction and empowerment. But in games, sometimes the opposite is true. Year after year, more complex simulations arise, when players can be micromanaging troops, a military base, a life, or even entire cities. Sometimes, this gives rise to intricate systems that take many hours just to learn. Look no further than Dwarf Fortress or Mage Knight board game to understand what I am talking about. Is game design a separate branch of design? Does striving for a simpler and more straightforward design don't pay in the game industry, and we should work towards more complex and intricate simulations? This is game design thinking, and today we are going to understand what is an elegant design and techniques on how to create it. Reading many articles to create this video essay, I was impressed to see how many times the writers had to defend themselves, saying that even because a specific game was simple, they were enjoying their playthrough, or that simpler games are not equal to easy to beat, thus they are not boring. That's why designers have come up with another definition called elegant design, to separate the word simple that doesn't reliably describe what is an elegant design, that can also be a complex design. An elegant design is one that achieves more with the least amount of resources. You can see examples of how humans perceive elegance in real-world storefronts, in which the stores selling high-end products usually have less elements in the front, and conversely, stores selling cheap products tend to have a lot of products on display. One game designer known for his elegant designs is Shigeru Miyamoto. For example, in Mario Bros., the jump mechanics serve many purposes, like allowing to dispatch enemies from above and below, get power-ups, adjust the environment to access new places, get coins, get high scores at the end of the level, and more. That's the reason why the designers of Super Mario made the jumping mechanic so satisfying compared to contemporary games. Jumping is so essential to the gaming experience that making it wrong could have destroyed the whole gaming experience, because the player will jump hundreds or thousands of times during a game session. Now, why is an elegant game better than an inelegant one? The first reason is that elegant design diminishes the cognitive load of players, so they can learn the game mechanics using the least amount of mental resources as possible. Again, this is not the same as a simple game. For example, a game like The Witness has straightforward rules that define how you can interact with the boards, so simple that even a child can interact with them. But from there to solve a puzzle is a whole different story. You can diminish cognitive load by creating simple mechanics that get straight to the point in the least amount of steps possible. That's the reason why The Witness need no text to explain the rules. Because you know that the thing that you will do most of the time is to draw lines in the boards to find patterns. Or in Mini Metro, you know that you have to join the figures with lines, and trains start automatically to carry passengers. It will add nothing that the player must manually load passengers. And that gets me to the next point. These simple mechanics must be interconnected. In The Witness, you can discover that not only the world is beautifully created, but also you can find patterns in different objects scattered around the game world. In many games, the amount of experience points or resources that you receive is proportional to your performance, so both mechanics are connected. If all players receive the same score, there will be no connection between the in-game mechanics and the score. One way to create an inelegant game is to create many exceptions to the rules. For example, in the board game Terraforming Mars, there are many cards or mechanics that are exceptions to the rules. There are so many of these elements in the game that they give a specific indicator, an asterisk, next to the description that indicates that that mechanic is an exception to the rule. It is a good game, but its inelegance makes it very difficult to have a good grasp of it the first time you play. Your design is more elegant when you have few to no exceptions to the rules. Also, in order to diminish the cognitive load of your players, you must reuse established conventions. Your players will enter your game with certain preconceptions of your game, based on their previous real and game experiences, and also your promotional material. In Mini Metro, designers use the same type of graphic design used in many Metro maps around the world, using only straight and perfect diagonal lines. Or if you are designing a game for a specific niche, like a strategy game, players have certain expectations on how to manage units and resources. This is not to say that you have to create a completely unoriginal game. In fact, your game has to have original elements and challenge established conventions in order to stand out, like Undertale, completely turning around the typical RPG narrative and gameplay style. But there are many things that still fall within general convention, like encounters and the graphic style. Players know what to expect, but they also discover new things. And the last way to diminish the cognitive load on your players is to use signifiers, basically any indicator that communicates to the player how to use the mechanic. In Mini Metro, you can grab the lines and move them around, and the game shows immediate feedback. In The Witness, the starting dot sends a pulse once in a while, to indicate that there you must start drawing the line. In Human Resource Machine, each number and operator is represented by a box, and you know that boxes are containers, but also you can lift them and put them in another place. It's an elegant way to represent an abstract concept. Now, one of the main reasons why elegant designs gives way to games that are not simple to beat is because they generate emergence through interconnected systems. As we saw in Super Mario, a mechanic that is elegant can be used in multiple ways. That's the case of Downwell, when the player uses different mechanics for various purposes. For example, collecting a new weapon also provides health or charges, and shooting can be used to decrease the falling speed, destroy the terrain, and kill enemies. The use of a single, simple mechanic in multiple ways and into interconnected systems gives the game depth. While breadth is the amount of different mechanics, depth are the different levels at which a mechanic is contained or influences another. Keeping the Downwell example, there are multiple layers of depth in this game. The player gets gems for killing enemies or destroying certain terrain tiles. Having a certain amount of gems makes the character enter into the gems high state, which increases their damage. Gems allow the player to buy in the store improvements like health or charges, but also the amount of gems influences the final score that unlock different color palettes and game modes, giving players a fair amount of personalization and personal accomplishment. This depthness of the game systems can be compressed in the phrase easy to learn, difficult to master by Nolan Bushnell, founder of Atari. The classic example is the game Go, a game that has only a few rules, but the amount of different moves makes it almost impossible to generate a definitive solution to the game. This is a way to play the game that is unbeatable, or that gets the game to a dead end. Games with very few mechanics are prone to this problem. For example, Tic-Tac-Toe is a game that has a defined solution, which deprives it of its fun after you find it. That's why also many games with little depth have a hard time engaging players for a long time. There are many mobile games that depend mostly on fast reactions and offer little to no depth. These games are fun for a short session, but players are reluctant to come back to these types of games, because they are easy to learn, but easy to master. That's why many games use extrinsic motivators like daily missions or random time prizes like loot boxes for players to come back. This strategy is useful in the short term for most players, but a lot of them will drop the game and just a few will keep playing the game solely for the extrinsic motivators. Games must offer more than a void system filled with extrinsic motivators to deliver fun and meaningful experiences, and not depend on human biases to nudge players to grind constantly and not enjoy their time in the game. I am sure that you or someone you know has said, "I keep playing this game just to complete the daily missions." That's something that we must eradicate from the design of our games. Now, we have talked mostly about games with little breadth, but games with multiple complex systems can also be elegant. The same principles apply to how the players learn the game and how they master the game. For example, every race in Starcraft has just a handful of units, and when you play the campaign, units are introduced gradually, so the player has time to understand the synergies between them, while also understanding how they can be used to defeat different enemy units that players will use later in the campaign. Many games with sandbox elements like Minecraft have many complex systems that have allowed players to create wonderful things, but at the start of the game, the player starts with no resources and with the sole purpose of finding a shelter, to later focusing on mining more valuable minerals and craft bigger and more astonishing creations. Elegant design allows designers to use the existing systems and place new systems or modify the existing ones with little to no impact. One good example is how Frostpunk designers created the Last Autumn expansion that used many mechanics and systems from the main game, but the elegance of the original game allowed them to change the game from a survival city builder focusing on player versus environment to a city builder more focused on the economy and even adding new resources and buildings, with minimal impact for players in terms of cognitive load, but allowing them to discover new ways to play the game. Even the music is different, reusing the main theme, but instead of giving a sad and despair feeling, giving angry and energetic emotions. Also, you can include more elements into the game design in order to create more cohesiveness between the game mechanics and artistic elements. For example, Ape Out music changes depending on your ratio of attack. The more you attack, the more fast and energetic the music will be. In Mini Metro, the music changes each time you make a new connection, and even passengers get into the cars at the rhythm of the music. Displaying visual, auditory, and mental feedback all at once. Here, the music is not just an aesthetic element, it also responds to player input or is used into the rules of the game. Finally, elegant games with a lot of depth create more opportunities for players to enjoy the game in different ways. That's the reason why players of EVE Online invest thousands of hours to fulfill a specific role in the world of the game, or players specializing in different units or races in MOBA and strategy games. The difference between elegant games with many layers of depth and the ones with just a few is that deeper games will generate more engagement over the long run, but can be more difficult to learn. Conversely, games with a few layers of depth can generate a lot of engagement in short runs, but must add more layers or rely on extrinsic motivators to generate engagement in the long run. Finally, what techniques could you use to improve a design that you feel is inelegant? The first solution is to use the Occam's razor. This law, initially used in science, is used as a design principle that states that if you take out an element of the design, and this is no worse by it, leave it out and apply the razor again until you get a design with the least amount of elements and noise to generate the desired experience. Also, you can mind the horror vacui bias, an impulse to fill all blank spaces. If your game is constantly at high energy or it has no ups and downs using the mechanics of the game, you will have a hard time generating surprise and amusement in players. Certainly, there are amazing sections in what remains of Edith Finch, like the Lewis chapter when you control the reality and the fantasy of him at the same time, or the Molly chapter when you control different beasts and animals. But most of the game still consists of slow, walking exploration. In Mini Metro, you usually set up your new connection in the first 2 or 3 days, and the rest of the days of the week, you are just making little adjustments and waiting the Sunday to go quickly to get new elements. Without these little empty spaces of time, any game will feel tiring and inelegant. And finally, a good advice from the book 101 Things I Learned in Architecture School by Matthew Frederick is that any design decision must be justified in at least 2 ways. For example, if you have a jump mechanic just to collect items, it will be a waste of resources, because you can use the jump mechanic combined with many other mechanics, like terrain modification, killing enemies, and more. Shigeru Miyamoto states that a good idea is something that does not solve just one single problem, but rather can solve multiple problems at once. Keeping this in mind will lead you to design more elegant and engaging games. As a final recap, to design elegant games, you must have in mind that your mechanics are simple enough to be understood at a glance by players, and they must be interconnected enough to create complex and deep systems that players can use to play in different ways, using informed simplicity, a way to discern patterns within complex mixtures. You must reduce the cognitive load and surprise players at the same time, using a mixture of creativity and reusing conventions, so players' expectations are fulfilled and they get that little extra that transforms good games into great ones. Thanks for watching this video. I hope you like it and that this will be of help for your current or future designs. Remember to like and subscribe and activate the bell to receive a notification on future videos. Also, you can follow me on Instagram to receive bite-sized chunks of game design information. See you soon.